That would have been good. Yes. All
All
right.
right. Well, why don't we get started? I think it's a great time to jump right in. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. And if you are watching this recording, we really hope that you enjoy it. And welcome to our special presentation on supporting agency minds, turning wellness into workplace strength. And we really appreciate you joining us for this educational and informational session. My name is Krista, and I am the agency partner manager here at GTM Payroll and HR. And before we get started, you'll receive an email later today with a link to the recording of this presentation. And there will also be a link to download the slide deck because there's going to be some good information you might want to reference again. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to submit them just through the chat here. We have that chat feature turned on. And then we're going to try to answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation. So if we don't get to your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you after the presentation. So let's jump right in. As I mentioned, my name is Krista. I have been with GTM for 2 years now, and I have been in this industry for many more years. I started as a teacher. Hi, Jen. And I started transitioned to nannying when I moved to New York City. Eventually, I founded my own nanny agency named Kith and Kin, Household Staffing Services, and I worked with adventure nannies, eventually merging with them as a placement manager. And so I've had the privilege of speaking at the APNA and INA conferences, Nanny Palooza, and now I'm also a mom. So I've been in so many of the seats that you're sitting in, and as an agency owner and just an employee, mental health and well-being is always a concern. It's always a priority. So a presentation like today's, I would have really loved to attend, and we're really fortunate to have Sarah Martin join us today. She is one of our fantastic human resource experts and our own personal wellness coordinator. So this is Sarah Martin. We're really excited to have you here today. Let's get to know her just a little bit better. So she has 25 years of comprehensive human resource experience with areas of expertise, including training, resolution, excuse me, and employee engagement initiatives. She also has a strong commitment to bringing people together and ensuring job satisfaction, efficiency, and teamwork whenever possible. So it's some pretty good big goals. But before joining GTM, Sarah also spent 18 years at a large grocery store retailer as their human resources manager. And she worked on many special projects for them, including wellness too. Sarah became a yoga and meditation instructor 10 years ago. And after these practices had really a huge impact on her own stress levels and how she approaches life. And so all of that informs the content that she's going to share with us today and the work that she does. So, Sarah, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Krista. Thank you. And appreciate getting to know some more about you as well. And yes, I am excited to be here. I'm very excited that we're talking about mental health, period, right? Depending what generation you're in, there was a time where we didn't talk about any of this in our personal lives, let alone in the workspace.
Right,
Uh,
right.
so just like so many things, the pendulum has swung from one extreme maybe to almost the other, and I think it'll land back in the middle as a lot of things do. So
That's
happy to be,
great.
yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, this is what we have planned today. So, we want to talk, of course, like we said, about mental health and wellness trends in the workplace, specifically the challenges that you all face as a small business owner, and how to be sure to take care of you as well as the caregivers, what they expect, and how you can kind of support them in this ever-changing workforce. Because you're right, we have many generations that are in the workforce. So we're really excited about that. So this is kind of the roadmap of where we're going, and we'll do a little Q&A at the end as well. So to get us started, what can you kind of share with us about the state of mental health today in the United States?
Well, so uh, certainly there's a lot of statistics out there, and I have to change my view to be able to see them. So I haven't
I'm sorry.
quite don't have that on my screen at this moment, but I can generalize. A lot of times we lead with facts and numbers to get people's attention. Certainly, I believe it was 1 in 4 that will be impacted by a mental health, whether it's a crisis incident. Not all of these diagnoses are forever. So certainly, whether it's ourselves and it's based on, postpartum depression is something that I'm sure a lot of your clients deal with. And, so regardless of whether it's yourself or most of us can just look around our immediate family, our immediate friends, and know that somebody is affected by that. So I'm really, really happy that we're talking about it.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, it really reduces the stigma to open up that conversation because there is more awareness now. So, I know myself, I know what affects my own mental health, but what are we seeing as the common factors in our mental well-being today, kind of overall?
Well, so, obviously, and I say that I feel like we're not talking about the after effects of, um, sorry, the after effects of COVID, of the pandemic. So, I think that there was a lot of isolation, right? We're being fed a lot of fear. So certainly, I think that, um, again, we have all of this stuff swirling around us. For me, could go with my rose-colored glasses a bit, until 2020, right? It felt like everything was imploding. So certainly we've got, the most division politically. We've got economic stress, social media coming at us and feeding us, our own, um, scenarios, if you will. People are isolated. There's a lack of true connection, and certainly they say that the opposite of connection is addiction. So you'll see a lot of that
Mm,
as well.
interesting. Yeah. So that makes sense. And when it comes to the corporate world, specifically for those, running a business, what are we seeing in terms of the benefits of good mental health? I mean, I'm sure some of it is pretty obvious, but I would love to kind of know what the research says on that in the corporate world.
Yes, so certainly, we know that when we feel better, we do better, right? So, we want to go at this a couple different ways today of starting with yourselves as business owners, as busy people who, have your own family. So certainly starting with self, right? And if you're the leader of your agency, that's where it starts, right? If anybody's ever worked anywhere, certainly it needs to start with the leaders, and then that is the tone that is set. So certainly it's becoming an expectation of our younger generation. And I have a 22-year-old and a 20-year-old, and I'm really happy and proud that we are talking about these things. Uh, and again, the integration can be difficult, but when we are treating people as whole people, they show up and they're more engaged. There's more teamwork when I think about nannies being more present for those kids, right? Probably being more creative. And, the absenteeism's certainly lower. And when people are, again, feeling really supported, they're more loyal and the turnover is less.
Yeah. And that's really what we want with children. So yeah, we want continuity of care, and so turnover is always a huge concern. I say that as someone who has a 4-year-old. So yeah, and now let's talk about boosting that productivity. What does that really look like?
Right. So, yeah, as I said, when we feel better, we do better, right? So, again, that increased creativity, better communication, hopefully, right? If I feel confident in myself and I'm not dealing with anxiety, depression, all the things that can really affect us, I feel more secure in, maybe calling my agency to say, hey, we had this little bump in the road today. If I can put myself in your seat, I would like to know proactively if something had happened or, they're coming to you with their good ideas. Of course, reduced absenteeism and certainly, as I mentioned, greater presence, which impacts the kids.
Right. Right. Well, that's awesome. I mean, all of that makes perfect sense to me. So, some of this, why is it so important now? Obviously, there's so many benefits, but what would you say? How do you speak to that right now?
Well, so yes. So, right, if we keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, right? And we all have heard that saying,
Hmm.
it's not going to work. So we are in this. I don't know about anyone else, but it feels like we're drinking from a fire hose, right? As far as,
Right.
change is concerned. I just did a presentation at an HR conference about leading change, and we've got to stay on top of things to stay relevant. So whether we agree that it is an employer's responsibility to help, support people's mental health and overall wellness. It doesn't really matter whether we agree because it is the expectation of the workforce coming up. So,
Mm,
and certainly, can we start with ourselves? That's super important as far as, being able to, stay with it, retain your talent, speak on how you differentiate yourself as an employer. Certainly, again, there's a lot of stressors coming at us. And, as a collective group, let's start talking about how do we deal with those and how are we addressing them. So,
mm.
our survival depends on it. And, I think we'll talk here about what you possibly might do for the nannies, but also for the families to talk about, educating them as far as
Yeah.
how can they change in their support as well.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting. I mean, even if it's not been expected before, it might be expected now. So let's talk about, the changing workplace in 2025, specifically how things have changed. And maybe, I mean, obviously, if we all had a magic wand, we would maybe say, we could say something a little different and make some predictions. But what would you say how it's changed and how it's still changing?
Yes. So obviously, again, I kind of joke from a staffing standpoint. I do feel like COVID was a big turning point. And after that, it was like, where did everyone go? Right. So now we're competing, I think people really reassess things. And there's obviously a lot more hybrid work. People are door dashing. People decided I don't need as much money as I thought for retirement. I want to live my life differently. So, you're certainly up against a lot of competition. And certainly with the flexible scheduling, that's a really hard thing that you can't really compete with, depending on your families. And again, these are conversations you might want to start having to say, hey,
Mm,
here is what we're up against, and let's go at it as a team, as a family and an agency, as far as supporting our folks who are going to take wonderful care of our children. Certainly, you have technology that can pull people away, or also you can use it for your benefit. And we'll talk about that with some apps and some wellness type things.
yeah.
AI is here to stay, right? So, how are we embracing that? Can we use it to free up our own time so that we have more time for our self-care? And certainly, we've talked about the shifting employee expectations.
Yeah. Those are all things to consider, and I think many agencies are feeling the effects of that when families work hybrid, and then the candidates don't want to work with parents who are working hybrid and are maybe having their hands on in the care a little bit more than they have in the past. And how do you help your candidates navigate that, make peace with it, accept what is, because like AI, hybrid working, flexible scheduling, that sort of thing is here for some, it's really here for some people. Even here at GTM, we get Fridays, off to work at home, and I work remotely myself because I'm not near the office. So I think, yeah, there's been some major changes that corporations have made, and then how do we help nannies even cope with that? Or not just nannies, but housekeepers and many other people who work in the home. So that's really great. Thank you for sharing that. Um, and then, challenges that business owners face. I think it's really important to acknowledge that while business owners are trying to be everything, not even just business owners, right? I do want to back that up. I know that we have business owners here, but um, like there's so many people on the call right now, Diana and Jen and Joe, and like Katie, Robin, a lot of you, Sarah, you're effectively running in taking on the mantle of a lot of the responsibility of the business. So, in a way, you're really owning your role. I just would love to kind of uh, acknowledge that there are some challenges that those of us who are kind of really stepping up into positions of leadership within the business, we're trying to meet the needs of everybody all the time without, really we have limited resources and not being sure really how to lead when mental health does become an issue. So yeah, I would love to kind of hear your thoughts. How do you think that agency owners and their staff members can really address these things?
Yes. So, again, I always do believe that it starts with us first, right? So we are role models. And I could tell you to, do all these things. If I'm not doing them myself,
Mm,
then really it's a little bit hypocritical, but coming from a child, um child care, or early childhood development, right, or anybody with your own kids knows it's not what we're saying, it's what we're doing.
right.
So, and I like really bite-sized pieces. I am a yoga and meditation instructor. And so I'll tell people, conscious breath is amazing. And I do, I want us to have a little experience of that. And I will do that for us, time allowing. But maybe it's just a conscious breath at every red light or at a stop sign or in between emails or calls. Let me come back into my body, take a breath. And I love a little mantra of like, all is well, or, whatever it is, but retraining your nervous system, because when you have all those spinning plates and the balls and the demands that are coming in, right? I don't know about anybody else, but, especially when my kids were young and I was working full time, I didn't realize that my nervous system was hijacked and I had low grade anxiety because there's always feels like a blinking light. To your point, you are
Mhm,
responsible for so much, and sometimes it's helpful to kind of retrain our brains to keep it in perspective, right? Like,
mhm.
so whether it's I'm doing the best I can, all is well, we'll talk about boundaries, we'll talk about, making sure, that at a certain time you shut it off and you shut
Yeah.
it down. So, ooh, just took a conscious breath and it was the first one taken all
Mhm,
day. That's it, right? And that is the mind-blowing part, is that this is something we are doing all day every day. Thank goodness, right? For free.
mhm.
But if it's landing in your throat and your shoulders are up here and you're holding, um it's working against you. Whereas, to your point, if you just let it come down to your belly, let's all just take one quick conscious breath just to notice. You can close your eyes or look down at the table. but you're inhaling through your nose, it's passing your throat, your chest, and you're filling your belly up. Make sure that belly's coming out. Some people breathe opposite, and then belly, chest, throat, nose, and letting it go. It can be that simple. And then it keeps growing from there. So, but that's my favorite. Take a breath. There's a reason
Yeah,
we say it and we do it, right?
for sure. And I just gave a session at APNA last month about how to really not freak out. Well, the whole session wasn't on that, but just a tangent of just some tools of when we feel ourselves starting to freak out by not how do I want to say that? By by not just going to a bag of chips or smoking a cigarette or opening up Instagram or whatever, what can we do to kind of actually help ourselves in a way, checking email even. Sometimes it's just that need to always be on and work and go and produce. So
Hmm.
yeah, that is a really good reminder to kind of stay present. So thank you for that. And
Hmm.
let's talk about leadership and mental health for just a moment. I would love for you to go into more detail about how, you said we have to start with ourselves. And I mean, and I know you've touched on some of this, but maybe you want to go a little bit deeper of how, you know, the owners, the operators, and but particularly people who are in leadership roles, how they run their business and manage their employees.
Hmm. Hmm. So I am curious if people on here can just raise their hand if it's just you, your virtual hand, like is I'm just trying to gauge if it's just one person, um, if you have employees, but if you're just on your own, raise your hand and I will talk about a couple of those things about, virtual assistants. And certainly we love to hear in the chat some things that you have done to create some boundaries in space. Because it's really interesting. And Krista, I have a feeling you have a perspective on this, having run your own agency. There's a lot of wonderful things and freedom and creativity and all of these things about being an entrepreneur, but also who's taking it over when you're on vacation, right? Are you taking a
Right.
vacation? I have friends who own businesses and it's really sensationalized, I think, and there's some wonderful things, but it's like, okay, how are we addressing when am I taking that breath? There's these blinking lights are coming at me all the time. So really doing yourself a favor and assessing that for yourself. Uh, you know, Making sure that I know that just because I work till 10 o'clock at night for the last several years, I can change that. I can shut this
Mm,
down and trust that things are going to be okay. Also accepting that I'm not going to please everybody, that problems and issues and conflict are going to be part of this.
mm,
There's, most of us have a lot of people pleasing in us and we are perfectionists and it's celebrated, right? To be this busy and to never stop and all those things, you have to make a very conscious choice to say, that's not why I'm running this business and I want to be a role model. And there may be some other things that I need to do in order to make sure my own mental health is stable and I can lead from there.
yeah. Yeah, evaluating what your end goal is in life, and that makes sense, for sure, and staying focused on that. So I love that. Well, thank you. So, I know some people are listening like on mobile too and may not be able to raise their hand, but I
Sure, sure,
know
sure, sure.
we do have people, people who run with one person, others have a small staff. In both cases, how can the workplace culture impact well-being, positive and negative? But I know you touched a little bit on that. But is there anything kind of that we missed there?
Yes, again, I think a lot of education, right? And again, depending what generation you are,
Mm,
will determine whether we talked about this stuff or not. Coming up, you leave all your baggage at home, you show up as this professional person, and then you go home and deal with whatever you're dealing with. Well, that is not the expectation. People are expecting to show up as their whole selves. So you
Mm,
want to normalize conversations. Sometimes, again, we might want to steer clear from it. But we want to talk about it. And, one of my favorite examples is my kids we're talking about social anxiety at like 14 and 15. And I didn't even really know that was a thing. I just know that I talk to fill the silence. I'm hyper vigilant about making sure, all these things are in place. And I did not know at their age in my adolescence, I thought something was wrong with me. So
mm.
we want to understand the benefits of normalizing the conversations. And that, it just helps us help each other when we're talking about it. So you want to
Right.
lead by example. Again, you have to be careful when you are the leader, you're not oversharing, your own diagnosis or struggles or whatever. But we're going to talk about some educational things and some other things you can do to support your staff, for sure, your caregivers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, in the interest of time, I think we could just touch on that, creating a supportive culture. Before we go, we can kind of look at that slide, but honestly, I think if we just kind of jump right in, creating a supportive, why don't you tell us about EAP? That would be amazing for
Mm,
sure.
Yes. Well, I'm hoping that, all of you have an EAP um, on your docket of benefits. I think there's some very reasonable employee assistant programs out there. And this is always something I lead with because while we want to normalize conversations, we are not therapists.
Right.
And I'm sure we've all experienced people telling us way too much or things that we are not equipped to deal with. And that's when it's so nice to be able to say, oh, listen, I hear that you're struggling. I understand. And here's an employee assistance program. And then on top of that, they have so much education and free trainings that you can offer as well and take yourself as well.
Yeah, I think that's such a balance because, employers, bosses, are not meant to have that boundary of knowing what's going on in that way. So, well, and let's talk about supporting caregivers. This is more of a little bit about what might impact the mental wellness of nannies and other employees that agencies place, housekeepers and all of that. Sarah, you did a presentation for National Nanny Training Day a couple years ago on mental well-being. So let's look a little bit about what you were discussing, which the first one was stressors. So take it away. I'd love to hear what you had to share with nannies.
Yes. So, this is something that we want to mention. I'm not sure, how much or how often we are offering things like this for nannies, but that would be definitely something that enhances their employment, right? One of those things that we're talking about. So it was a really great day. We were able to do it in person, tagging on to their oh my goodness, I want to say resuscitation, and I should that's my age showing as far as um giving mouth to mouth. Please help me with the medical term, Krista.
Oh, like CPR, like first aid?
CPR, thank you. I know. I'm like, I know there's letters there. CPR. It's my own. I'm just showing my
It's
own
all good. It's
mental
all good.
state. So
Yeah.
we tagged it on with that, but certainly, their stressors are very similar to all of ours, but we do want to think about, their own childcare and family responsibilities that I always think about teachers like this too. I'm caring for these kids all day long and I got to go home to my own family, it's kind
Right.
of like if you were a landscaper and then you got to come home and mow the lawn and take care of that, uh,
Right.
but a lot more intense. Certainly financial concerns, we're all up against that right now. But again, we know, how much our caregivers get paid. And unfortunately, we are very lopsided in this country when it comes to what we place value on and how people are paid, in my opinion. Mental, physical health of loved ones. So certainly, maybe it's not their own kids, but they have aging parents. This is, this is what this group shared. Certainly a lack of time for self-care if they're running from the family and then to care for their own. Where do they find that time? Many caretakers are natural pleasers. So it's hard for them to say no and set boundaries. And that was something that really came up. And I feel like that's people really took away. Like I hung out after and they were just really happy to be talking about this. There's a lot of things I think as a yoga and meditation teacher and somebody who's focused on wellness, I take a lot of things for granted that people don't know
Yeah.
or don't have resources to. So that's the other place where I think as leaders we can come in to say, hey, here is EAP, or we're going to talk about some apps that are very accessible as well.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Well, let's talk about ideal versus reality.
Yes. So this was a little fun we had at that meeting. And, again, just like I was saying, oh, the entrepreneurial vibe of I'm going to have my own thing and I'm in charge and I get all my creativity. Yes. And it never goes away. Right?
Right.
Just like, oh, I'm going to care for kids and we're going to go to the playground every day and I'm going to read to them and I'm going to, whatever, and they're going to love me and I'm going to love them. And that might be the case, maybe 50% of the time, if you're lucky. And then,
Right.
we have the scenario on the right that it's exhausting and kids have bad moods and kids get sick and they have challenges. And this is not what I was expecting.
Right.
So, I talk about this as the job, but I also talk about this in a wellness sphere for all of us
Right.
who are sold this bag of goods that we're supposed to be happy 100% of the time too, right? So,
Right.
so one thing that has really, really helped me as I'm constantly striving, and again, we are marketed to this perfection, and there's a wonderful life coach. Her name is Brooke Castile, and she will say, if you are happy and content 50% of the time, you are killing it. So to actually accept the other 50% of like, oh, here it is, the boring part of my business, the
Right.
part I don't like to do, my exhaustion, whatever it is, it can be the resistance of that is way more draining than actually accepting what is, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yes. Well, let's talk de-stressing tips. Anyone who's been a nanny, hired a nanny, run an agency can certainly relate to all of that. So, what are some ways that nannies and actually all of us really in a care role too can do to de-stress?
Yes. So I know we want to leave plenty of time for question and answer. So we had our little breath, but certainly, Google it, look it up. There's all sorts of breath work for calming down, for energizing, all of the things. So, and it's free and it's easy. So that is my biggest one that changed my life. I didn't come to this until I was like 40 years old. So it's never too late. I was stretching, yoga, walking, time in nature, right?
Mm.
So maybe checking on your nannies, like are they able to get out? Is there space to be outside? Like I said, boundaries, saying no, and creating the boundaries, the easy part. It's holding the boundaries and the uncomfortability that comes after. That's a whole presentation all on its own. But the one fun thing you have with your nannies is that they get to play. Like, are they taking stuff too serious, right? So,
Mm.
so in conversations, and again, I don't know how much they call the agency owner or the leaders for support, but certainly encouraging that and doing that for yourself. So taking in your surroundings. So if you deal with anxiety, it's coming back into your body, right? We're external so much. So it's just coming back, sometimes just feeling your feet on the ground and then using all of your senses, right? Sometimes they'll say, name 5 things that are green in your surroundings. What smells are you taking in? Just coming back into your body and using your senses to do that.
Mhm.
And obviously calling on support, family, friends, gyms, fitness therapists, coach, clergy, support groups. I do find yoga classes and yoga studios and YMCA. There's awesome support there. So there's a lot of it around us.
Yeah. Yeah, and they don't have to do it on their own. So, and
Yeah.
making time for that. So, yeah, well, I think, we have quite a few slides here with like 3 or 4 slides with resources. So again, I just want to like reiterate that we are going to send uh this presentation out so you can go through and resource or review, I should say, all of these. But is there anything on here that you want to kind of call out?
Well, yes. So I think it might be on some of the different slides, but um, Well Hub may not be on here. This is a newer one that can be a good uh, benefit for your people.
Mm,
So you might want to look at that. Insight Timer is one that I really, really love. Calm is another one you want to look up for your business that can certainly you can send out to the nannies. And again, I don't know what the communication looks like, but that was some of the ideas of it's a quarterly newsletter or um I see, yes, as far as, what the resources are, but like maybe I'm not doing that at all right now. So I decide, again, quarterly or I solicit my nannies to say, what kind of support do you need too? But yeah, certainly there's a lot of these apps out there and they just keep coming. So Insight Timer is one that I love, that I actually, that's a one that I use personally, and we can send that in the email as well.
yeah. Yeah, and then sleep. If you
Oh,
are not resting, you're not really going to be able to care for the kids. You're not really going to be able to formulate thoughtful emails and responses to conflicts with clients and innovate. So I love that you put these ideas down here too. This is
yeah.
great. Yeah. Well, let's talk about future trends in workplace wellness. We're nearing the end, and so, this is what you've done for decades. I'd love to ask you what you are seeing kind of in terms of the trends for workplace wellness and what can we expect. And just to caveat that too, Joe asked about hearing more about suggested EAPs for agencies for the internal staff because most agencies they don't really have a whole HR department, right?
Oh.
So, yeah, I would love for you to talk about future trends in workplace, what you're seeing people do. All of that's great.
Yeah. So certainly, preventative care focus, which I love, right? Which is wellness in any capacity, right? Again, whether it's teaching people to breathe, to regulate their nervous system. We all know that stress is an epidemic and that it is typically the number one contributor to heart disease, to a lot of things. So around stress, so much of it really is about changing our mind, right? If I'm running around convincing myself I'm stressed, which we celebrate in this country too, sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going for a hike. I'm going out in nature and I should be doing this or doing no. So really owning that, right? And owning and believing and putting our investment in preventative care that,
Mm,
people are really, given time and space and supported to take care of themselves. Certainly using technology again. We do a lot of fun like steps contests or offer different like a pickleball workshops. So using these kinds of things to make sure that we're offering people the ability to do that. And then some
mhm,
companies really doing a personalized well-being plan. I know like a Zappos has like a life coach, like again, treating the whole person. And like I said, Zappos, I know they have like a life coach on staff so that, it's not just about work. I want my mental health to be good. I want my physical health to be good. I want my emotional health to be good. So really, again, just treating people as not just worker bees, right? Not just an ends to a mean, like how are you really?
mhm. Yeah, that's great. So, just summarizing that, how do we stay current? What are we kind of pulling away here?
Yes, so certainly attending something like this. So I just want everybody here to really give yourself credit for making this time. Again, that I feel like that is something that we can so justify that we don't have time for our own growth and learning, which is huge for your mental health. So you're already one step ahead, I feel like, and encouraging it of your, immediate staff. And again, we can talk about some ways that maybe you're already helping your caregivers or families, but you want to offer practical resources. So we'll definitely look into the EAP question. Don't know if there's one that's better for, caregivers versus just a general good EAP. So we'll talk about that and we'll send some information out. But again, mostly being a role model, right? So I go into clients and a lot of times like if somebody is emailing at midnight, like the leader of the company emailing at
Mm,
midnight, I can guarantee you work-life balance is a struggle for all of their people. Because if the owner is emailing at midnight, I just actually had this conversation with another client or person who works for a person. And so I feel like, oh, if they're emailing at midnight, then I need to be there too. So watch
right.
your own boundaries, how you're filling your own cup, share it, talk about it. Maybe do a little if you have two or three people that work for you. Let's do a group outing where let's go or set a timer that we're going to walk at 20 minutes and go outside during lunch. And certainly training staff and supporting caregivers and again, I guess you got to kind of feel for the families, but I know people have used nannies and they need to understand that they have a role and a responsibility here to care for this person as a whole person also.
Yeah, that's so real. And I think most all very high quality agencies, particularly the ones that we partner with, either started as nannies or they understand that need for sure
Yeah.
to support and talk to their clients about that because their clients haven't been in this world, but they have. So yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing this. It's really highly informative, and we're going to get to some questions, but just real quick, if anybody here wants more information about HR consulting services for their agency or their families who may need assistance, because families need HR support too. And the agency can't always be the HR support. What can you tell us about this?
Yes. So, a GTM has HR for businesses and households, which I think is amazing. I joke that wherever more than two people gather, there will be conflict. So, being in the grocery industry as long as I was, I joke that I could write a book. But sometimes it's really difficult when you're invested and engaged and these people, right? So a lot of times it's like, oh, I have an opinion or I have,
Right.
a thought about things. So it can have many, many benefits of, first of all, saving you stress of you don't have to be the final, I mean, you are the final decision maker, but it really helps. We work with a lot of smaller businesses. It really helps to be able to say, I'm gonna send this out to a third party, right? So I know
Yeah.
we had a household where there was some dissension in staff. So it can be nice to have a more neutral third party come in and be able to help with that stuff. We can do the, team building and certain wellness training. We do mental health, education. We do harassment prevention training. So that's required annually, I know, by corporations, but certainly, people need to be educated when they're working in households as well. We have skills assessment, and like I said, the conflict management I think is super helpful to have somebody kind of lean on and even sometimes just call to talk through things,
Yeah.
right? So I have one client, she's a corporate client, but it's nonprofit, and she always knows the answer. And but she credits so much of it, and it's really me in the background going, yes, yes, that's right, do it, go have the hard conversation. So sometimes it's a little bit of cheerleading as well, because she's like, I never would have done this if it wasn't for you telling me I could. So sometimes it's
Sure.
it's a little bit of coaching for the business leader as well.
Yeah. Well, and sexual harassment trainings are required in so many states, regardless of how many employees. It even extends to household employers.
Hmm.
So that's really important in some states. And then even things like employee handbooks. I know that sometimes clients want agencies to lay out all the terms of their employment, and they have questions about interpretation of HR law things. And that's really not an area that agencies should get too far into the weeds on. You don't want to say the wrong thing, and then have there be an employment suit, and then suddenly you're implicated because you gave bad advice that you thought you were giving the right advice. Obviously the partnership, we're here to support to the extent that we can, but it's really good to make sure that you're directing them to a company that this is what our HR specialists they're up to date on that, and they know the laws and can advise them well. So yeah, that's great. Well, thanks so much, Sarah. There's a lot of good information. And then again, partnering with us, that's, as I mentioned, that's my job. You know, we can offer one workers' compensation in-house. I think that that's a huge thing, as well as any other benefits that we discussed today. We are the one-stop shop for you guys. We're talking retirement plans, those HR support services. We're talking if they want to give tax-free money toward healthcare, they don't have to go to a third party and pay more. They can kind of just wrap it all up in-house. And as we know, mental health is it's physical health, it's financial health, it's all of those sorts of things. And so that's definitely something that we can do. We offer commissions as well when your clients sign up, which is a nice little stream of revenue. And we really focus on payroll and tax and leave the nanny placements to you. We don't compete for your clients. So the last thing I would say too is data security. You know, that's a huge thing in this day and age, especially in the financial world. We go above and beyond what is required for the clients to protect their information. So that's huge. And lastly, I'd say just differentiating your agency beyond the payroll. That's kind of what I was talking about to make those things really attractive and make a really well-rounded position that just drives home, hey, at this agency, we do things a little bit differently. We're standing out from other agencies who maybe just post a job. We are really trying to recruit people who want careers. And as a career, they expect things like legal pay. We only speak in legal pay terms. They're going to get sick. Anytime you have a child around, there eventually it's coming for you. And it's really hard to say you got to take a sick day if you're not contributing anything toward that. And so these are just little things that you can kind of do that we can help support you with, and you do not have to know how to do them. You just need to say, our partners at GTM can help you with that. So, and with that, I'm going to say that that's what we have for today, and we did have some questions. So we're going to jump right into it. I would say the number one, we had a kind of two questions that were similar, which was how can we foster collaboration and mentorship in a fully remote environment? It's got to be inclusive, all of that without really breaking the bank. How can our agencies foster that environment?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we talked about a lot of that today. I think one of the things is to start with your people and ask, right? So we don't want
Yeah.
to, read minds, and I tell clients too, even just asking. And don't ask unless you're going to react. I do say that. Don't, there's some risk to asking and not being willing to follow through on the feedback. But if you're willing to follow through on the feedback, just asking the question is showing
Mm,
your people that you care. So ask the questions. What is it that they would like to see? Certainly, like I said, a very, very simple way is some kind of newsletter, some kind of electronic communication. I know that, if they are using iSolve, I love the recognition program within there. We use the coin system, and I get to learn a lot about other coworkers. So there are some electronic platforms that you can use to make sure you are communicating. Put an electronic message out there, something motivational, inspirational on a Monday morning, or, something like that. But there are a lot of ways, certainly a team building or some kind of training like New England Nanny did, in conjunction with National Training Day. I think it's called that the CPR is, re-upped, and you can be doing some team-based things like that.
Yeah. And I remember during the pandemic when things were really monotonous and hard, uh, we had um, uh, we had a back end internal communication system, and I decided that like we needed to have a channel where people can share a win that they wanted to, whether it's personal, professional, this person is closing this placement, or, I just got some great news, or that was really nice to kind of build as well, that it's collaborative if anybody needs support. And it doesn't have to break the bank. It's just a touch point in communication. Because think of it at an office, you'd maybe pass by someone at the water cooler or on your way to the restroom, and just seeing somebody and saying hey and seeing their smile actually makes a huge difference. And when you're remote, you just don't really have that. So yeah,
Yeah.
really good suggestions there. And I think that this was answered, but how can nanny agencies support candidates with depression? More nannies are struggling these days. I think we gave some really good resources too on apps. Um, and just putting it out there that there's not one thing that I think maybe agencies, if they're really coming up with this, it's I don't know. I think it's more about kind of causing them to look at the longevity of the time they've been feeling depressed, and
Mhm.
struggling, and the root source. But I would love to kind of hear if because again, we're talking about professional and personal boundaries.
Sure.
Um, so it's hard, but
Mhm.
as any agency on this session can attest to, agencies go and support the who cares for the carers. It's often the nanny agencies, and often nanny agencies here way more than a typical company ever would. And so, yeah, I guess how would we kind of support candidates and direct them into a place
Yeah.
where they don't have to struggle?
Yes. And I think this is, as this does get more mainstream, right? This is one of the biggest challenges because we do still have HIPAA laws and all the things that, you don't totally want to cross over as an employer either. So sometimes that's another good benefit of having an HR person or somebody, a third party, where
Yeah,
you can say, you know what, I don't want to cross lines, boundaries, these kinds of things, because sometimes you might be talking about a leave of absence, or, again, we want to know what kind of benefits and get them to the right, caregiver for them,
right.
and have the right conversation. Whereas you can get down a rabbit hole real quick. I'm sure many of you have heard way more than you want to kind of to Chris's point. Like people will tell you, uh, either they're not going to tell you anything or they're going to tell you way too much. So that's again where that EAP comes in, and EAP will have a list of counselors. They have a counselor you can call, this person can call, so that you're not getting too far down the rabbit hole, but saying, and again, sharing your own experience though. Don't be afraid to say, you know what, I struggled with that too in my 20s, or sharing your experience, and then giving resources. Whether
Yeah.
it's, make sure you're looking up support in your area. But it's a fine line, because some people don't want you talking about that at all with them still. Right? So,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
and you don't have to be the one who solves, you just have to be the one who directs. So I think having
sure.
those resources, that's a really good
Very well
point.
said.
So
Very well said. Beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. And I would say the last question really was something I had never heard of. And I thought maybe goes along with the future of corporate wellness. Is someone asked, what is the value in mental health first aid training for at least one team member? Which was a great, I've never heard of that. So I don't know if you have, or if you want to expand on that, that's amazing.
Yeah. Mental health state training, you said?
It's mental health first aid training
Oh,
for at least
first
one team
aid.
member, which makes
Yes.
me think, yeah, if there's a mental health crisis, kind of like if there's a fire, or if there's
Yes.
something going on, one person
Hmm.
on staff who can kind of
A
help with
hundred.
that.
Yes. I think that's an amazing question, an amazing thought, and very cutting edge. right? To be able to say, oh, we do have this on staff.
Mm.
And again, our kids are coming in very different as well, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure you guys have had to do a lot of different education, whether it be about autism, ADHD. So there is a lot more knowledge, but also, a lot more afflictions I think that we do need to get educated around. So that's another way that even if your caregivers complain about it, right? I gotta go to this training. They know you value them and that you're giving them resources. So it is another way to support them in their own mental health, their own confidence in being a caregiver. So I think it is an amazing thought and question. And definitely, if it's something that you can do, look up mental health associations in your area. I know here in the Capital District, we have NAMI, and I think that's statewide. They may have free trainings and free programs that you
Mm.
can get your people to. So great, great
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that that's great. I had a thought on that and I lost it, but it's it'll come back at some point. But no, I think that this is really a lot of great resources. We can only do so much, but we can't do everything, but we can do some. And just being, oh, what I wanted to say, and then we'll wrap it up, is just we are definitely going to see after 5 years of folks who had a couple years of lockdowns coming into professional environments where maybe they don't have a lot of the resilience or the ability to have hard conversations because there's just a gap in our social development that happens. And instead of employers being frustrated or looking down on them, there is an element of accepting that this is what is happening. And maybe some people are going to have mental health crises, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're weak. It means that we're in an environment. We've had some hard years, and so we can only control what we can control, which is not them. We can only control ourselves and the resources. So I think you've shared a lot of really good things for everybody. So thank you, Sarah. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank
well,
you.
yeah, and that's all the time we have for today. And like I said, we're going to have an email with this afternoon with a link to download the presentation as well as the PDF and a link to kind of watch the recording. So if you remember, oh, somewhere around here we were talking about this, feel free to review. But also, please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions about the presentation or partnering with GTM, our services. And if you and your families are interested in some of those HR services, I would definitely be happy to get you pointed in the right direction. That's my job here, is to give you the tools that you need and navigate our team, because we have about 100 people on staff here. So yeah, always feel free to reach out to me, and we really appreciate your time. Thanks for being here. Have a great day,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you so much.